Hello and welcome to Weirdos in the Wild with our co-host, AJ Oxley, paranormal investigator with Beyond This Life Paranormal and multi-generational paranormal enthusiast, and Lynn Tincher, Beyond This Life paranormal investigator, Reiki master, published author, and near-death experiencer. Travel with them, a couple of everyday weirdos on a wild ride to all things paranormal and metaphysical.
On Weirdos in the Wild, AJ and Lynn travel to the lovely town of Grange, Kentucky, where they visit the Crossroads Grange radio studio and talk with documentary filmmaker and president of McGill Media, Chris McGill, about his documentary on the Spottsville Monster, a Bigfoot-type creature that has been seen several times in and around the Spottsville, Kentucky area. Hear his behind-the-scenes stories as well as his take on what the monster really is, right after a message from our sponsor.
Hydra Publications is your one-stop shop for genre fiction. This month we have several new releases, including Revelations, Book 1 of the Poppet Cycle by Donna J. W. Monroe, and the pre-order for Adrift, the latest Folly Beach mystery by best-selling mystery writer Bill Knoll. Visit hydrapublications.com for more information on these books and those written by Richard Knack, Jim Miller, Rachel Rawlings, Tom Wallace, Arlen Andrews Sr., Lynn Tincher, and others.
Do you struggle with depression, ongoing medical issues, or have you experienced past trauma? If you have, please consider the help of energetic healing. At Dragonfly Pond Holistic Services, we utilize Karuna Reiki, crystals to align and heal chakra function, meditation, and sound healing to address these issues and help in your healing process. To learn more about energetic healing and how to contact us, visit our website at dragonflypondenergy.com. For those who call in February to schedule an appointment, mention this ad and receive $25 off your initial visit.
Welcome everyone to Weirdos in the Wild. My name's AJ.
And I'm Lynn.
And tonight we're here with Chris McGill.
He's the documentary filmmaker and president of McGill Media. We're sitting in his studio in downtown LaGrange for Crossroads LaGrange radio station.
Yep.
Welcome, Chris. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first.
I've been interested in the unexplained and paranormal since I can remember. When I was a little kid, my favorite TV show was In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, which I think is now in reruns everywhere. So I've always had an interest in the paranormal, and I actually had the opportunity to do a radio show about it when I was in radio, in broadcast radio years ago on FM, and it's just something that stayed with me. So when I got into video production, I decided to concentrate a couple projects on topics of the paranormal, and of course Spottsville Monster was one of them.
So one of the things we really wanted to talk to you about today was the documentary Spottsville Monster. Yeah. You know, just exactly what is the Spottsville Monster and what all was going on there to even get you on board with the project.
Well, the name Spottsville Monster is used very loosely. It actually refers to a Bigfoot type of creature that has been sighted in western Kentucky around the Henderson, Spottsville, Kentucky areas. It's been called many things. Down there, they refer to it as the Spottsville Monster because that's what the locals know it by. Of course, everybody else refers to it as Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So that's where the name of the documentary came from. It's basically Kentucky's version of Bigfoot.
How did you first learn about it?
I learned about it by reading a book by Bart Nunley, who lives in the Henderson area, or used to live. He wrote several books about it because his family was actually, as he refers to it, they were terrorized when he was a young kid back in the early 70s by a group of these creatures on their property. He always had those memories from being a child stayed with him, obviously, as he grew up. So he wanted to know what this thing was. And so that was kind of a passion of his to find out. And through his research and investigation, he eventually wrote, I think he has 3 books out now total.
Wow.
And not all of them are particularly on Spottsville. There's other books that he's done relating to other cryptids in the state of Kentucky.
So you decided to do the documentary on it. So kind of walk us into, what made you do that documentary, and then walk us into actually doing the documentary.
Well, I was fascinated that there was something in Kentucky. I always had the impression that Bigfoot was, up in the Pacific
Yeah.
Northwest, Canada, British Columbia. Then, of course, you got the Yeti when you go to Europe and all that. So it really kind of fascinated me. So I contacted Bart, and he was actually a guest on a radio show I did years ago called Dimensions Encounters with the Unknown. And after his radio interview and getting to know him a little bit, I decided that would be a nice video project to do. So it took us roughly a year and a half, probably total, to start the project and finish it. It wasn't done just over a month or so. It was done almost over a year. And we actually traveled to Western Kentucky and were given access to the Southern Cherokee Nation property down there, which had been taken away from the Native Americans back in the 1800s, and then it was re-gifted back to them in the 20th century. And certain members of the Southern Cherokee Nation still live on that property there.
Now, is that part of the Nunleys' property or very close to it?
No, it's very close to where the Nunleys grew up.
Okay.
We did go back. Their home has been torn down years ago. It's nothing but a vacant lot where the Nunleys grew up. But it was very close to the Green River, which is down in Henderson. And according to Bart's information, it seemed like this creature, of course, it has to be near water somewhere. So there was a lot of sightings along the Green River near Spottsville. And so we went back to the location where it all started, his story all started. And again, like I say, there's nothing there now. But we were fortunate enough to be able to interview quite a few eyewitnesses, including Bart's mother, who gave us full-fledged testimony of what used to happen at their home back in the 70s. It was shocking, and I can only imagine being in their shoes when this happened. It was a terrifying story he told about, animals being killed, guard dogs being so scared of this that they would whimper and crawl under the porch of the house to stay away from it. His father, according to Bart, his father actually shot at it through the screen door of their back porch when it was standing on their porch and hit it with a shotgun. There was blood left over, but the creature just walked away like it really wasn't anything.
Now, how did you find other witnesses? Because I know you had several witnesses in the documentary.
Well, Bart sent those witnesses to us. Those are people he had talked to either through doing his book or since his research. Because after he wrote the book, he and I lost contact several years ago. But to my knowledge, he still to this day, tracks down encounters and still investigates down there. So most of the witnesses were all coming through Bart.
Did you have any witnesses that didn't want to talk?
There were a few. There was one that did talk to us, but he asked that his face not be used because he was, you'll see in the film, he was a taxidermist. He's done work for very well-known people around the country and beyond, and so he preferred just, not to be, he's trying to avoid ridicule from people who don't believe in things like this, but he was one of the most sincere people we talked to, I believe.
So going into it, were you a skeptic, a believer, somewhere in between?
I've always wanted to believe, but this was an opportunity for me to actually get out in the field in some place where this thing's been seen, and experience the stories from the people who experience it themselves, and hopefully, get some evidence.
Yeah. So did that happen? Or tell us what happened.
We filmed, and I don't remember exactly what year it was, but we were in the middle of a drought that summer. And we went back to Spottsville a couple of times over the summer of this particular year. We were supposed and had planned on camping on the Southern Cherokee Nation property, where it's sighted on a regular basis, according to members of that group. But there was also a family of panthers who lived on the property. And when we were given the tour, a partial tour of the land where they have, there's actually a spot where they put offerings down for this creature. And they took us to that. It's really, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there thinking about it, because that land it's hard to describe. You felt different when you walked on that property. Right. And it just, you all obviously have investigated hauntings and things. You know how when you walk into a place that's active, you just get that feeling.
Yes.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, I don't know what this is. Jamie, my girlfriend and partner, she is a psychic medium. She started shaking 1.5 miles from the property before we even arrived there. Didn't know why. So there's something of a paranormal, supernatural nature, I have no doubt about, on that property. I don't know what that is. We were supposed to camp, as I mentioned, due to the panthers being on the property. They actually had, when they gave us that short tour I was just mentioning, they had someone in front with a rifle and somebody in back of us with the rifle, because they had seen them, and during a time of drought, they will not hesitate to attack a full-size human being.
I've been chased around a pond by one.
Yeah. Okay. So you
And
know.
are
I
not
know.
supposed to be in Kentucky, by the way,
Right.
Well, these we did not thankfully see any, but they said they hang out in the trees, and that was the reason we decided not to camp that night, because he said if you do camp, you have to have a fire going all night and someone up, and I'm like, nah, we'll just go back to the hotel. That's fine. I'll have my cold Bud Light and I'll just sit at the hotel tonight. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
But you were going to, tell us about some of the experiences there. And
that was one of the big ones. And there's other things that are connected to when I'm saying I didn't feel right. Jamie, immediately, as soon as we got out of our vehicles and Bart introduced us to the chief, we were actually invited on that land during a fall festival. So this was September, I guess. Still very hot, and again, in the middle of a drought. So it was kind of an honor for us to be there, because normally outsiders aren't allowed there during these certain times of, I call it a festival, they may call it something else, but it was basically their harvest time. Jamie stayed very close to me while we were introducing ourselves to everybody, and this one gentleman, who later we found out was basically the medicine man of the Southern Cherokee Nation, he immediately took to Jamie, and just without even telling her his name, I mean, he may have given her his name, but he just said, follow me, and walked her into a part of the woods very close and adjacent to where we all were. And it was really weird that they connected, because he knew she was having issues. He could sense it. He took her away and explained some things to her, and basically asked her to listen to the trees, which this sounds crazy as hell, I know. But she said that she could actually hear them. I'm not talking swaying in the breeze kind of sounds. There were other sounds. I didn't hear it. She did, and she described it to me. And after that, she was totally calm. She was okay with everything. It was like her introduction to whatever was there, and vice versa. It's the way she explained it to me from a psychic perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
But we had a lengthy interview with the chief of the Southern Cherokee Nation. He explained to us in detail what their forefathers, their grandfathers, grandmothers had talked about for centuries. Basically, it's all been handed down. Story.
Didn't they call them the old people, or the old
man of the forest, or the men of the forest, something of that nature is what they called them. But he described stories, hearing from his grandfather, of them coming in, picking up a hog with one arm and just stepping over one of the big fences. That's how large they were. He did show us a tooth that he claims came from one of these creatures.
Yeah, I saw that portion in your documentary.
Yeah. He unfortunately did not agree to having anything done on it. History Channel did their Monster Quest on this same subject, and he also refused for History Channel or Travel Channel, whoever it was, to have anything done with it. The only thing I had from that point was high definition photos of the tooth. He let me take some high definition photos of the tooth, along with video, obviously. And I took it to the U of L archaeology department, and Dr. DeBlasi at the time was there. And he said the closest thing he could find was a feral pig tooth. But again, he couldn't confirm it without having DNA evidence.
Right.
So who knows?
Several different people described Bigfoot or the Spottsville Monster. Would you care to tell everyone how they described it? Because it's a little bit different than what most people would have described Bigfoot.
There are several descriptions. Now, Bart's artist rendition of it shows something that looks more evil in my mind, more of a monster, to where typical Bigfoot sightings have come across, a kind of human face with little hair on the face, but hairy body. We had people talking about seeing that, and we had people who mentioned seeing something different, a little bit more fierce. And again, your memory in a traumatic situation is going to be tricky at best. So, yeah, it has been reported to be a little different, a little more slender, with more, I think there was a mention of one witness who said they noticed claws coming off the hands, where other people were just amazed by the height and Bart Nunley's mother, who gave a very good interview and recollection of what happened to them. She described it as being about 7 to 8 foot tall, just covered in hair. She didn't report anything about claws or fangs or anything like that. When she saw it, at least later, and she unfortunately has passed on, but when she had seen it after the 70s, it was more of a 7 to 8 foot tall creature. It was under a street light, if I remember correctly, that she just described it. And what they saw back in the 70s was more of that creature, of a little more fierce looking.
Right.
And I didn't see it, so that's why I'm kind of being reluctant about details on it, because I don't want to get anything wrong. But yeah, there was 2 different creatures, or 2 different descriptions that were given. The majority of the people I personally talked to was more of the typical Bigfoot type of creature.
Okay. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was when they were finding the bodies of the animals, that it wasn't like a typical animal kill, that it seemed surgical, that the soft organs and tissues were removed, and so that makes me wonder, what do you think the Spottsville Monster really is?
I think it's connected with the rest of the quote-unquote Bigfoot, Sasquatch sightings have happened. One interview, especially with the taxidermist, that kind of made me think of this from a different perspective, of being just a missing link, so to speak, between humans and apes. Actually, 2 things. One, Bart's mother also said there were UFO sightings around the house prior to this thing coming around. She described a barn where this bright light, she described it as just a bright light in the sky that came down very low and burned the tin on the roof of their barn. They noticed that the next day, and then they would see these things. Other people had reported seeing lights in the sky, unidentified things in the sky.
Did they ever mention the balls of light? A lot of Bigfoot sightings, people talk about seeing the lights, and they're ball-shaped lights, usually in the woods.
That could have been what Bart's mother was talking about, because she said it was just a big ball of light that came over the barn, and the next day, during the sunlight, they could see it was scorched. And then the taxidermist thinks they're interdimensional, because his first sighting, he said they stepped out of what he referred to as a portal. He said it looked like a heat wave in the summer that would rise off the pavement, but it was in the corner of his property on a wood line, and he said he clearly saw the 2 creatures walk out, said there was a male and a female. And when he opened his truck door, they heard that, saw him, turned around and walked back through and disappeared. He's seen them, as of the time of we made this film several years ago, he had seen them dozens of times on his property over the years. He's an avid hunter. He told us that they would communicate mentally with him. He recalled hunting one day and the female coming through the forest, and he said he just made eye contact and he heard her asking him, "Where's the portal?" And he said without even thinking, he just turned around and pointed in the other direction. She said, "Thank you," and walked off and was gone.
Wow.
And he said that every time he had those experiences, it would be like, what the hell just happened? But he believes, and from his testimony, it sounds like they could be a dimensional kind of thing. Or extraterrestrial. Who knows? I know it sounds far-fetched, but Bigfoot in general is kind of far-fetched anyway when you think about it.
Hey, we're into it all weird. That's why.
Well, yeah, because that would explain why nothing's ever found.
Right. If they could just
step into this world and step right out.
I've read the interdimensional and also the mind speak, as people like to call it. I've read those reports. It's interesting. And you also had another gentleman who said he saw one in the barn that disappeared in front of him. He said he had his gun pointed at him.
Yeah, he was very terrified that night, and he couldn't understand where it went.
Yeah.
If it's the same one I'm thinking of, he also said that once he made eye contact with it, he laid his gun down for no apparent reason. He doesn't know why he did that. But he felt like he needed not to have his gun.
Not to threaten it, huh?
And researchers I've talked to since this project was finished, 99% say they're not aggressive unless you make them be for whatever reason.
Don't poke the Bigfoot.
Yeah. Exactly. Offer him some of that beef jerky, like
That's
Bigfoot
right.
likes, and
Give
just
him a beer,
let it go.
Let him go. Yeah.
So yeah, it's still up in the air for me. I mean, I think I'm open to the fact that, yeah, it could be something more of a paranormal, other than, I mean, Bigfoot's paranormal anyway, but it could be something of a dimensional nature.
Hear more from Chris McGill talking about the Spottsville Monster right after this message from our sponsor.
Hydra Publications is your one-stop shop for genre fiction. This month we have several new releases, including Revelations, Book 1 of the Poppet Cycle by Donna J. W. Monroe, and the pre-order for Adrift, the latest Folly Beach mystery by best-selling mystery writer Bill Knoll. Visit hydrapublications.com for more information on these books and those written by Richard Knack, Jim Miller, Rachel Rawlings, Tom Wallace, Arlen Andrews Sr., Lynn Tincher, and others.
Do you struggle with depression, ongoing medical issues, or have you experienced past trauma? If you have, please consider the help of energetic healing. At Dragonfly Pond Holistic Services, we utilize Karuna Reiki, crystals to align and heal chakra function, meditation, and sound healing to address these issues and help in your healing process. To learn more about energetic healing and how to contact us, visit our website at dragonflypondenergy.com. For those who call in February to schedule an appointment, mention this ad and receive $25 off your initial visit. Welcome back to Weirdos in the Wild. Before we return to our program, AJ and I would like to take a moment to remember my brother John Tincher, co-founder of Beyond This Life Paranormal, and Alan Oxley, AJ's father. Both passed away just before we recorded our first episode. Each and every episode going forward will be in remembrance of them. Thank you.
Well, let me ask you about this. There was a couple of things that were hard evidence. There were some footprints. Mm-hmm. There was a handprint. I believe it was Bart who showed them to you on the other person's property. Mm-hmm. We're into all things weird. I always say I just dabble in Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Handprints are pretty rare. Think about that.
Well, without dermal ridges in them, it's hard to determine. And I use that word loosely because that came from the archaeologist, Dr. de Blasi. He referred to that as we were discussing other things. That's one thing that scientists look for in both footprints and handprints to try to determine whether they're fake or whether they're real. Because every animal, obviously a dog's not going to have a footprint. I mean, they'll have a footprint, but they're not going to have any dermal ridges. Right. They will have them, but as a canine would. Mm-hmm. So he said they look for that a lot. Bart told me that too, that they look for that. I didn't notice that, and that's been a long time ago, but I didn't look that close to it. I think it was a teenager at the time that told us that story, and he lived on the land where they got the footprints and the cast. He has a collection of footprints all taken down in the western Kentucky area. So yeah, there are trace evidence for it, but of course, hair that was up and sent for testing never comes back. Lost. Amazing. And there was another project you may be familiar with called the Erickson Project that took place where scientists worked over 5 years getting DNA evidence, hair, and so for this family of Bigfoots. I believe that was in Grant County, Kentucky. And all that was taken by the government and not returned.
Like the UFO stuff?
Yeah. Bingo.
Was there anything that you cut from the documentary that...
Nothing major, no. We had a lot of extra footage we didn't use.
Yeah.
But nothing that we had to cut out. I will say after the fact, now, if anybody goes on and sees the film on YouTube, the gentleman who had the recording of the Sasquatch, we found out a couple years later, he admitted that he had faked that. Mm-hmm. So that sound recording in the film just... that was his attempt at being funny, I guess. But
how did he fake it?
I heard the story from Bart Nunley years later after we finished the film, but I think it was he had blown up a balloon, put a recorder fairly close by, then just spread the ends of it out so it would squeak as it was releasing the air. Tweaked it a little bit in Audacity or whatever audio program he had. At everyone else, as far as I know, they told the stories as they saw them.
That's the reason why so many people don't believe.
Because people like
that.
Because they just want their 2 seconds of fame of, hey, I saw that. But it defeats the purpose.
Right.
Totally.
There's so much fake out there that it's hard to find the truth in it sometimes.
It is. And that's why, when we did this film, I've interviewed a lot of people in my broadcast career. And you learn different things. I've learned different things from police friends and so forth. about how you read people when they're telling you a story. Every one of these people, with the exception of that one guy, I felt were very sincere. Just by their expressions, they would look you right in the eye when they told you the story. That other guy didn't. Now that I think about it, hindsight's always 20/20. And there's something down there that people are seeing. I don't doubt that at all.
Well, I know my brother, the one that passed away, John Tincher, that started
Great
Beyond
guy.
This Life. Thank you. That AJ and I are part of. He was at Land Between the Lakes, and him and his son saw a creature beside the lake that looked like a he couldn't really tell, but he said it kind of looked like a bear, but the way it was moving was like a human, and it actually squatted down next to the lake like a person would. And he watched it for a few minutes, and then it got up and went on its way. And he said he was like nudging Jesse, saying, "Hey, did you see that?
We just saw Bigfoot."
So, just why do you think there's so many sightings in Western Kentucky? What about Western Kentucky do you think is drawing these creatures in?
You got the Green River down there, the Ohio River. Plus, it's not that populated. I mean, it is populated. When you get around Spottsville, it kind of thins out a little bit. And I think, that's my personal opinion. I have no background on investigating Bigfoot other than doing the film. After talking with people with the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, there's also a lot of sightings. I mean, there's more sightings in the state of Kentucky than people realize. Natural Bridge is another hot spot, Natural Bridge State Park. There's sightings there, he claims, on a fairly regular basis. That's why he moved there. So he does research on a regular basis in that part of the state. And I think it's just obviously the more rural, the more room they have.
Right.
But as neighborhoods are going up and construction's going up, you're moving them just like you are every other bit of wildlife. So the sightings will probably increase.
Because I've heard rumors that it's in Jefferson National Forest now, which is in my backyard. So that's got me wanting to go out and walk around and see what I can find out.
There have been sightings over there, here, and there's been sightings as close to LaGrange as Smithfield.
Yeah, wow.
And Eminence, Highway 421, which runs from Bedford over to Madison. There's been 2 sightings along 421.
There, over by Lynn, Rough River, that area. There's a hot spot that's between Lexington and Cincinnati. That there's if you listen to some of these researchers, there's a gentleman who's doing like a long-term thing on his property there. I had something very odd happen to me while I was hunting in the woods in Western Kentucky. I walked into what they call the smell, looked around, and there was it was I was with somebody else. She smelled it. We looked around, and it was in the fall. So there was nothing to hide anything around us. We were walking down a path, and we walked up that path to get to the deer stand. We come back down, and we walked right into something that wasn't there before. And there was, as Chris, as you said, nothing there. Like, it's like something had been there and then it was gone. Just leaf cover everywhere. So it wasn't like we couldn't hear something walk away or we couldn't see anything. Because
you just had the smell.
We just walked
right into that. What did it smell like?
It's that wet, dog, nasty smell that people talk about.
Yeah. Well, the gentleman
weird.
that I was speaking of from Kentucky Bigfoot Research Organization, he actually bought an inn down around Natural Bridge. And he takes people out on Bigfoot hunts now.
Oh.
Let's do a trip.
Yeah, I'm down.
Take your podcast on the road
There
and
you
hunt
go.
for Bigfoot.
Well, we are weirdos in the wild.
Yes.
So, we do travel.
So if somebody asks you, what is Bigfoot? What do you what would you tell them? After talking to so many eyewitnesses. You've got the flesh and blood, and then you were talking about the paranormal part of it. So.
It's unexplained in my mind. I mean, I think it exists. What it is, I still don't know.
Yeah.
From all the, and again, I haven't talked to that many, just from the show I do now, from talking to people recently about the subject, to the people we interviewed in the documentary. It sounds like it is a flesh and blood creature that is very close to humans in the way it acts. There have even been reports of people spotting it where it's wearing clothing. Obviously not Walmart clothing, but fur. Where it's, I just saw something recently where someone described seeing it walking through the woods, and it had like a pelt laid over its shoulders. and it was in the wintertime. It was like it had made a kill, like the Native Americans who used every bit of everything that they killed. You know, it was utilizing the fur as a coat, it seemed. That's the first of that. That's the only time I've ever heard that. That was on a recent documentary that I watched that somebody else did. Yeah, I think they're flesh and blood. Whether they're interdimensional, that's still up in the air, but it's one of the top 5 possibilities, I think.
Yeah.
And then there's the question, are they aliens? You know, it seems like they look a little different if they were able to fly a spaceship, but who knows?
Would you want to see one?
I'd love to see one. Not real close. Unless it was nice.
You don't want to get close enough to smell it, right?
Yeah, right. And the gentleman I spoke with Kentucky Bigfoot Research, I didn't know this, but Chewbacca from Star Wars was modeled after the typical Bigfoot as far as the facial features and so forth. I didn't know that. It had been something totally different. And then the Bigfoot craze hits back in the 70s, where more sightings started coming out. And according to his research and his information, that's what caused Lucas to look at Chewbacca in a little bit different of a way. And that's where it came from. Hopefully they are kind creatures who don't want to hurt us. And hopefully hunters won't go out and say, well, the only way we're going to prove it is to kill one.
Hold my beard.
Yeah. That's BS in my opinion.
Right.
You don't have to kill one to prove that there exists, you know.
Yeah.
Okay with trapping one. Because I heard of, in that Erickson project I spoke about, Charlie Raymond, who's the person with Kentucky Bigfoot that I just recently talked to on my show, said that they had actually used broken glass in food to get the blood. They're fast against doing that kind of stuff. Because if they ate the glass, they could get internal bleeding. They could, you know.
That's just cruel.
But according to his story, the researchers were going after them cutting their fingers or something on the glass as they were picking up the food. Supposedly they got blood and were able to do testing on it. Again, that's where to go. It's a mystery.
You mentioned Dimensions, your other radio program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I basically, it's a reboot of my old show. It's called Dimensions Radio now. We just cut off Encounters with the Unknown. And we talk about topics every Tuesday night. It could be ghost, Bigfoot, paranormal, alternative forms of medicine. It's just stuff off the mainstream, you know, out of the mainstream. I think we all get enough from turning on our TV sets every morning to plunge our mind into chaos. So we try to take you away from that every week and just talk about things of the unusual.
Sounds a lot like us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very similar.
So I did have a couple more. So since then, have you done any follow-up with any of the...
No, life has gotten too busy, changing jobs. Like I say, we've shot that film. It's probably been 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I've lost track of Bart since then. But it's just with everything going on. Of course, now I'm running the radio station here in LaGrange, so that's taken up most of my time. But I'm still doing some ghost hunting on the side. We're doing some investigations here in LaGrange on a couple of different locations. And so we're hoping for new stuff.
And I hear this
Locally.
building's haunted.
This building, yes, it is haunted. Matter of fact, I had to take the deadbolt off the front door because when I moved in here in September, that deadbolt didn't work. It was stuck. It stuck in the closed or open position because you could open the door. The first time I had Mayor John Black on from LaGrange, the damn thing locked on its own. He was coming up the steps and I heard a distinct click. And he tried to open the door and it was locked. And I went over and sure enough, the deadbolt's locked. Hasn't worked since I moved in here, but it worked and locked him out. Wow. I couldn't open it. I had to go next door to the private residence, let him in that way, and when we came back in, it opened right up. That happened twice, so I finally took it off the door.
Ghosts didn't want him in here.
There's 2 ghosts in this building that we know of, that psychics have seen, heard, talked about. I've only felt them once since I've been here.
One's a female.
Yeah, one is the female.
I can feel
She
her.
used to be a house, I hate to use the word housekeeper. I think she was more of took care of the kids when it was a funeral home, and housework and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there's another female spirit who's been spotted here. She's known as the Flower Lady of Main Street. Always smells like flowers when she's around. she's been seen here. Her apparition's been seen through these windows a couple of times when this was a restaurant years ago when Elsie had the garden party restaurant here.
Uh-huh.
But I haven't seen anything, and I always feel comfortable here.
Yeah.
I hope they like the music.
It's classic. Of course they do.
Classic hits.
That's right. So, do you plan on doing any other types of documentaries? Not necessarily about Bigfoot, but
I do. Whenever time allows, I would love to get back into it. You know, I'm doing some video work now on the side for some other people, but I would love to get together and do another film on something.
Yeah.
Just when it's all about time.
Yeah.
Time and money.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It's always
I enjoyed the ones
about
about that you had the Bardstown ones you've done. So.
Oh, thanks for the Spirits of Bourbon
Yes.
Country.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool town. It's kind of similar to LaGrange in the fact it's got a lot of old buildings, a little older than LaGrange, but it's a neat, haunted town, definitely. Yeah. More spirits there than the liquid kind. Yeah.
So where can someone go and find all these documentaries to watch them?
YouTube. Yeah, just go to YouTube. You can look for the Spottsville Monster, Kentucky's Bigfoot. And it's under the McGill Media website, not website, but account on YouTube. And the Spirits of Bourbon Country is also on there. There's 2 McGill Medias out there. My logo is a red and black one. If you see some other guy's face, that's not me.
Yeah.
All right, then we'll ask the final question that we're going to try to ask at the end of every episode is, has your experience changed you in your life and why?
Well, it's opened my mind to things that I don't understand. Just don't, I've grown to learn, just because you don't understand it and it seems weird, don't discount it, because you're not that smart. You don't know everything.
We can't see everything.
So keep an open mind on everything.
Well, thank you very much for
Well, thank
joining
you.
us and helping us keep it weird, y'all.
Well, I'm weird. You can have me on anytime.
That's right.
I'll help you out.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Hydra Publications is your one-stop shop for genre fiction. This month we have several new releases, including Revelations, Book 1 of the Poppet Cycle by Donna J. W. Monroe, and the pre-order for Adrift, the latest Folly Beach mystery by best-selling mystery writer Bill Knoll. Visit hydrapublications.com for more information on these books and those written by Richard Knack, Jim Miller, Rachel Rawlings, Tom Wallace, Arlen Andrews Sr., Lynn Tincher, and others.
Do you struggle with depression, ongoing medical issues, or have you experienced past trauma? If you have, please consider the help of energetic healing. At Dragonfly Pond Holistic Services, we utilize Karuna Reiki, crystals to align and heal chakra function, meditation, and sound healing to address these issues and help in your healing process. To learn more about energetic healing and how to contact us, visit our website at dragonflypondenergy.com. For those who call in February to schedule an appointment, mention this ad and receive $25 off your initial visit.
Thank you for joining us at Weirdos in the Wild. Please show us some love and support on our Patreon account at Weirdos in the Wild. Like us on all of our social media. And if you've had an experience you'd like to share with us, visit our site at weirdosinthewild.com. Until next time, keep it weird, y'all.